Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Those who care to, please stand in prayer and pledge allegiance. Mr. Cameron, if you would, please.
Thank you. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and thank you for this time together. And Lord, we just pray that you will be with us tonight. Be with us in 2018. Lord, we just ask for your wisdom and guidance. And all we do and say in Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I want to apologize in advance if I have a coughing fit. I've had a cold that's hung on for about 2 weeks, and I'm going to try not to do that, but we'll move on to citizen participation. Anybody who wishes to speak to anything not on the agenda, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone who would wish to speak about anything not on the agenda? Seeing none, citizen participation is closed. On to boards, commissions, and committee schedule. Of note, the Board of Adjustment meeting scheduled for January 4th, 2018 has been canceled. City Council meetings are January 16th, 2018 and February 6th, 2018. We have no old business. Moving on to new business, I have motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0. Moving on to old business, on to new business. We have a request from staff to move resolution number 18-R-01 to the top of the agenda. Do I have a motion and a second to do that?
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. We'll now take resolution up. Resolution number 18-R-01, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, appointing authorized signers with Bank of Missouri. Need a motion and a second?
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second, Ms. Parks.
Good evening, Council. This is a very simple resolution authorizing us to update our signature cards at the Bank of Missouri. We had a staff change, so the 4 signers that are listed here, the mayor pro tem, director of finance, and the city clerk are currently the signers on the bank account. But by updating this resolution, they'll be authorized to remove the former employee, who is the deputy city clerk, from the bank account records, and therefore they'll be current. So this resolution will be supplied to the bank. They'll update the signature cards, and then the approved personnel will be authorized to sign.
Thank you, Ms. Parks. Do you have any questions from council? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Parks. On to new business, public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri regarding issuing a special use permit to Carmen Ice for the operation of a group daycare home at 530 East Hadley Street in Republic, Missouri. Mr. Tyson, would you give us a brief overview of that, please?
I will. This public hearing concerns an application for a special use permit which will authorize Ms. Carmen Ice to operate a group daycare home, which in Republic means that she will be authorized to care for children from her place of residence at any given time. Ms. Ice is currently authorized to care for up to 6 with just a home-based business license. This permit is required if you would like to care for more than 6, but not more than 10.
Thank you, sir. Anyone wishing to speak against this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Council. I am Carmen Ice. I'm the owner of the home and the child care business that is up for the resolution. And 3.5 years ago, I was here asking also for a special use permit at my home at 418 North George. And I was permitted that special use permit. And the reason that I moved was after 3.5 years, or 3 years actually, it got to where I no longer had a dining room table. My house kind of looked like Toys R Us in the living room, And after much prayer, my husband and I decided to venture out and look for a new home. And in doing, our realtor, Mike Lewis, was very good at helping us find a family-friendly, what we feel is a very family-friendly neighborhood. Our home sits on an oversized lot. It has the privacy fence that they desire, that we need. I have with me, I have my state license, which I have also given to the city whenever I applied for my new license for the city for 2018. Which does allow me, the state does allow me to have 10 children in my care at one time. They have seen that I am fit for that. And so by asking you to allow me to have the 10, obviously, income, if we have a new home, my husband does work by commission, so I am the one that does bring in the regular income. And so whenever we had our 10 children over on George, I brought them with me over to Hadley, and I could not look at any 10 of these children and think, I'm going to just release 4 of you, and that would be very difficult on me. That would be extremely hard, but for my children, that would be a very hard social and emotional thing to do to these children. Some of these families I've had in my care for 5 years, and they're family. These children are my family. Their parents are my family, and I'm asking you to please allow me to have the 10 children that I currently do have, because I brought them over with my license. I carry also, which I did file also with the city whenever I got my license, I carry an extra amount of insurance. We have American Family Insurance that would allow me to have 6, but I do have insurance that allows me for 10 children. I carry that with me, which I have put with the city, as I said. Excuse me. I just ask that you would please allow me and consider allowing me to keep my families that I currently have and love and care for. And also, on a side note, I have never had a violation with the sanitation, with the state, with fire marshal. I have always been approved on the first, which I praise God for. And we do run a very family-oriented and Christian principle child care. And I thank you for your time. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Brandon Weldy. My address is 420 Gold Ridge in Billings. However, my oldest son is now 6, and he was with Mrs. Ice from the time he was 2 until he graduated. He's a first grader now at Nixa. And then I also have a younger son who is 3. And the thought of, well, first of all, if she has to get rid of, I'm sure my kid will be one to go. And the thought of trying to find somewhere else for my little mini-me is very disheartening. But you know, we've sent both of our kids to Miss Carmen, and I couldn't imagine sending my kids anywhere else. Her previous home was a lot smaller. The yard was small, not a very, you know, not ideal. But now, with the yard being the size that it is, with the privacy fence, just that boiled into, I could not imagine sending my children to anybody else other than her. So please allow for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address. You'll have 5 minutes.
I'm Rochelle Shoemaker, and I live at 1030 South Farm Road, Bodart. I worked with Ms. Barnhart, and I'm sure you're all aware of the tragedy that occurred with baby Grayson in daycare here. I also had my infant at a daycare at a church facility here in Republic. In August of 2016, I picked up my baby from a police officer and was told this daycare was under an investigation. We thought we were blessed just to find daycare on a short notice after that incident. We were incredibly blessed because we were led to such a caring, loving, and Christian daycare. Our daughter's life will forever be changed because of Miss Carmen. This daycare is a blessing to our community. Not allowing Miss Carmen's request would be a tragic loss to our community and a traumatic event to all the children. If you have ever had children, I implore you to allow Miss Carmen to continue her daycare request.
Thank you. Excuse me. Anyone else wishing to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Heather Baldwin. My address is 1691 East Chickamauga here in Republic. My husband and I just moved here back in the spring. Rochelle, thank you. So I teach at the middle school with Rochelle and with Coach Weldy, and then my husband also teaches and coaches at the high school. And so with moving here from Neosho, our big concern was obviously childcare. We have a 4-year-old daughter. And so as in our search, Ms. Carmen's name came up more than once, and so we knew that she was somebody that we needed to interview and meet with right away. And fortunately, we just clicked with her right away. She was very patient with my daughter, as it took her a couple of weeks to get acclimated to a new place and to adjust. And so for to see the change in her, when she can't wait to go back. She loves going in. This morning she was there after Christmas break and was running in and excited to see her friends. And so it's nice to have her in a place that I'm comfortable with. It's very nice and reassuring with Ms. Carmen and how she follows all the state licensing. She encouraged me repeatedly to check into her and do background checks on her, which I did, and checking out with various people to do follow-ups. And so just seeing how professionally she is with her business, I know that she's taken excellent care of my child and hope that she can continue to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak for this agenda item? Ma'am, if you'd state your name and address, you'll have 5 minutes.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Chelsea Bowling. My address is 3166 Jamestown here in Republic. My daughter has been at Carmen's since she was a baby. So when Carmen said this, I knew that I had to be here and make sure that you guys know what she does for my daughter and what she means to her. When looking for a daycare for her, we interviewed several places, but God's Gift Learning Center was the first, and I knew it was the one. Nothing else compared, and I can tell you that one word that comes to mind is love. The kids were happy, the house was clean, there was order, and most of all, again, there was love. Carmen and her family love each other, each and every child that comes through those doors like they were her own, and her house is my daughter's home away from home. There are even a lot of times she does not want to leave, which is bittersweet because you want your child to love to go there, but you also don't want her screaming, crying when you're trying to leave either. God's Gift Learning Center does preschool, and I've been amazed by the knowledge that the kids have, and I'm so excited for my daughter to get to learn so much and be really prepared when it's time for her to go to kindergarten. To be honest, I wish my son, who is 8 and 3rd grade, could have experienced going to Carmen's. I know that there may be some concerns with neighbors about traffic and safety for their children, which is understandable. However, as a parent bringing my child into the area, I want the same safety for other children that I want for my child, and I would assume that all the parents speaking here tonight would do the same. I would ask that you allow a few more cars down their streets to allow the best daycare to impact the maximum number of children that they can. I also know that recently there have been a lot of negative news about daycares and preschools, especially locally, which is heartbreaking. But preventing Carmen and God's Gift Learning Center from being able to influence and affect the additional children that they can is upsetting. They're the best at what they can do, and I tell everyone about it. I hope that you can allow every child to continue with God's Gift Learning Center and my daughter to keep her home away from home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak for this agenda item? Ma'am, if you'd give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Leanne Gove. I live at 1338 South Acorn Avenue here in Republic. I am the assistant principal at Lyon Elementary here in Republic, and as you heard, Ms. Carmen watches several other teachers' kids, I think 9, 7. obviously that's a group of people that knows what it takes to care for kids, and I help care for 430 kids every day, and I do not know how Miss Carmen takes care of the ones that she does, but she is amazing at it. And it is, I can't just explain to you what it is, a relief it is just to be able to go to my job and help the kids in our community and basically not have to worry about my own kids. I have not a worry in the world when I drop them off there. They love going there. They don't want to leave at the end of the day when I go to pick them up. But in addition to what everybody else has said about how much Carmen loves her kids and how much the kids love going there, I just would like to add that Carmen is a businesswoman, and she's good at what she does, and she is a professional. She is meticulous when it comes to following the child care regulations. As far as having updated paperwork from us and her paperwork being updated. She wouldn't even put diaper rash cream on my 1-year-old until I signed a paper for her to do that. I get a text if my son has a skin knee. So just wanted to put that out there that she's a professional and she's a businesswoman. So I think that her business is definitely an asset to our community.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak for this agenda item? Sir, if you'd give us your name and address, you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Garrett Prevost. I live at 635 Branch Lane here in Republic. I too am an educator. My wife teaches at Price here in Republic, and I'm an administrator in the Willard School District. And would concur with all the thoughts that have been shared with you so far. I think my kids have been going, my 2 youngest kids have been attending Carmen's since July, I think, since the middle of July. And I think one of the most important things for me is not only finding a child care provider that you can trust, which is of the utmost importance, but also someone whose values align with your values. That doesn't happen all the time. And so for us as a family to be able to take our children, our most valuable asset, if you will, the most important thing to us, and take them to a place that we can trust and also know that the values that we want to instill at home are getting reinforced in that setting where they spend as much more waking hours with Carmen than they do with us. To know that those values are being instilled in our children on a daily basis is something that I value greatly. And as others have said, I would request that you would consider approving this request. So that all of our families can continue to be in that setting with Miss Ice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak for this agenda item? Are you going to speak to us, young lady?
She might,
Can you
actually.
give us your name and address?
My name's Heather Freeman. I live at 632 South Schuler here in Republic. I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of support for Carmen to be able to get this. As a background for me, I work as a trauma therapist in Springfield, Missouri. When it came time to look for a new daycare, it was quite traumatic. I hear a lot of stories every single day from kids and from their parents about abuse and several unspeakable things. So whenever I go to look for a new daycare, I have a lot of things that go through the back of my mind, and it kind of strikes a lot of fear. And when I met with Carmen, we did one interview, and in one interview, all you could feel was the love coming out of that house. My daughter, when she first started, had a hard time adjusting at first. She was kind of young, and she's been there, I don't even know how long now, Carmen. It's been a while. And she loves it there. You know, she misses me, she misses her dad, but she actually looks forward to going and playing with her friends. And the whole time we're sitting here, she's naming off their kids and telling me whose kid belongs to which parent. And that's just something that you can't put money on. You can't put money on peace of mind. When I go to work every day, I work at helping kids overcome tragedy and traumatic events. And I get to know that my daughter won't ever have to experience that where I do. And that's something that I can't express to you enough. Puts my heart at ease when I go to work every day. So I do ask that you continue to allow her to attend there, and continue to allow Carmen to share the love that she does with all the families that she impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak for this agenda item? Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Moving on to the first read, I have a motion and a second for the first reading of bill numbers 18-01.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, issuing a special use permit to Carmen Ice for the operation of a group daycare home at 530 East Hadley Street in Republic, Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. I know you gave us a brief overview. Some things you have to add?
I'll just be really brief here. I always like to point out when we're considering special use permits for group daycare homes that when it comes to the special use permit process that is administered by the city, the issue at hand is a land use issue. Issues relating to the safety of that particular dwelling as well as quality of care, all regulated by the state of Missouri. This is simply a matter relating to land use, things that have already been mentioned this evening, things such as increased traffic, water, sewerage, things of that nature that might impact neighboring dwellings. Staff has done some research to determine whether there are any other special uses located in close proximity that may the impact of this may compound with those, but there are none in close proximity. So Planning and Zoning Commission had their hearing back in December, and they voted unanimously to recommend approval.
Thank you. Have any questions from council? Mr. Tyson? Okay, remember this is a first read. If you have any questions before the next meeting, please get with Mr. Tyson. Thank you, sir. Guess you might as well stay up there. This time, open a public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri regarding approving amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 2.65 acres owned by Creek Properties, LLC, located at 518 Northwest Avenue from medium-density single-family residential to local commercial. Mr. Tyson?
This 2.65 acres is subject to the application that was just mentioned in the title. The proposal is to go from the medium-density single-family residential zoning district, which it is presently, to the local commercial zoning district. A list of permitted uses in the local commercial district is provided to you in this packet, so you can see that. Of course, if the rezone is successful, they'll be allowed to conduct any of those uses inside this property.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the public hearing. Anybody here who would like to speak against this agenda item? Against the agenda item? Please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Tammy Elger, and I own the house at 539 Northwest, although I live outside of Miller. So we currently own 539 Northwest, and we have a good residential tenant there. And reading through all the different uses that would be allowed under this new zoning designation, while some of them I might not have a problem with, I think certain things would totally ruin the nature of a residential neighborhood, and that piece of property is surrounded on all sides by single-family homes, and I'm sure that anybody that lives there wouldn't want a bar in their backyard or some other things that are specifically mentioned there as allowable uses. While they might not mind an office building, they might mind a bar, and I just think that as a general rule, many of the establishments on there would not go well in a neighborhood that's all single-family homes. And there's several right in front of that property and basically all around it. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak against this agenda item? Please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you will have 5 minutes.
I live at 439 West Hines. My name is Lori Cloyd, and I have the voice issue like everybody else do. But my concern is that property is in a floodplain. My property is over on West Hines. I have approximately 8 acres. The city currently has 3 huge culverts that drain all the floodwater from that area onto my property. It has just increased in the 17 years that I have lived there, and each year we get more buildings, more residential, and it all drains to my property where it used to go to the very edge. It's now going halfway up that field at times. Along with the water, it brings flat screen TVs microwaves, any trash from all of those yards, anything that people have in their backyards when we've got a creek or river running through it, comes to my property. With that being in a floodplain, regardless of what they are asked to do, or there's no way when you pour an asphalt parking lot, there's going to be drainage. That extra drainage, regardless, somehow is going to end up in one of those culverts, and that culvert comes to my property. It's also, like the other lady spoke, it is a residential neighborhood. That C1 allows all types of businesses to come in there. It is a residential neighborhood. There are kids that ride bikes and skateboards up and down those streets, you know, and I just, if they could guarantee that it was a family friendly, you'd still have the parking lot, the building, and the asphalt flooding issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else who would like to speak against this item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, anyone who would like to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Brian Barnes. I live at 14353 Highway H in Granby, Missouri. I'm co-owner of Creek Properties, LLC. So this property that we're proposing to rezone is, it currently contains a residential building that is no longer able to be renovated or fixed up. It's in a state on the inside that's basically it just needs to be demolished. So when we contacted City Council about possible planning and zoning about possible options for us with this property, one of them was, you know, making it a single-family subdivide. But with the drainage issues that do come with the property, that was going to be definitely costly and possibly detrimental to other properties. So one of the things that popped up was a commercial rezone, which a lot of the properties around that area have already been rezoned, and it sounds like it's congruent with where the area is going as far as development, especially with the highway access from Missouri 174 to the south side of the property. So as far as the Creek Properties standpoint on this, you know, we're just wanting to rezone to sell. As far as what would go there in the future, I would hope that the developer in this situation would follow all city council and drainage requirements and make sure that they provide proper and adequate drainage for all the residents in the area.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. At this point, we'll move on to the first read. We have a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-02.
Motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri approving amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 2.65 acres owned by Creek Properties, LLC, located at 518 Northwest Avenue from medium-density single-family residential R1M to local commercial C1.
Thank you. Mr. Tyson?
Yeah, I'll just mention from an infrastructure perspective, the infrastructure available to this particular property is sufficient to support local commercial uses at this scale of 2.65 acres. just to respond to one of the things that was mentioned, there's potentially a mitigating factor for a concern for a bar. That would actually, there's an additional requirement there that you be 500 feet from the boundary of any residential property or church or anything of that nature, which is in excess of the 300 feet distance that you need to have a liquor license. So there's potentially a mitigating factor for that one use, but I do want to be clear that any other permitted uses in the local commercial district would be permissible if this rezone were successful. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this case back in December and voted unanimously to recommend approval.
Questions from council? None? Okay, remember this is a first read, so if we have any questions between now and the next council meeting, please get with Mr. Tyson to get those answered. Otherwise, we'll pick up the second reading in the next meeting. Okay, on to a public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri regarding amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 9.1 acres located at West Farm Road 174, owned by James R. Sparkman, from agricultural to two-family residential. Mr. Tyson, if you give us that brief overview, please.
Sure. This particular 9.1 acres, which fronts on West Farm Road 174, is proposed to go from the agricultural zoning district to the two-family residential zoning district. You likely recall that this property was just recently annexed in December into the city, and upon annexation, it is classified into the city zoning districts in the district that most closely resembles what it was while it was in unincorporated Greene County. So it was annexed and brought into the agricultural district. Now an application has been filed to rezone to the two-family density zoning district.
Thank you. Opening the public hearing. Anyone who would like to speak against this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone who would like to speak against it? Okay. Ma'am, if you'd give us your...
My name's Brenda Wisnett. I live at 4851 South Westfield. I'm not really against it, but I am unless they put in a water retention, because we live at the bottom of the hill, and right now we have water issues that we've had ever since we've lived there, and we finally got them under control. So if water comes toward our house anymore, we will have a lot of problems. And so I don't really know what they're planning to do, but I just know that they make sure that there's a good drainage system that does not come toward my neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else who would like to speak against this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, anyone who would like to speak for the agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Joe Carmichael. I'm here representing the Sparkmans that own the property, along with Eric Anderson, who's the project coordinator from our office. The plan is for us to, if this gets rezoned, for us to do the development of the property. And what we're proposing essentially is to do duplexes there. I know you've all had a chance to read the staff recommendation, and I wanted to highlight a couple things in the staff recommendation. One of the things the staff indicates is that they don't anticipate an increase in traffic flow. And certainly, we don't believe, in our experience having developed duplexes, we don't think that traffic actually increases with duplexes any more than it might increase with single family. They're also talking about studies that we haven't done but others have done. There's no indication that duplexes actually burden the school district with more students. That typically a community of duplexes doesn't increase the number of students in the local school district any more than single family would. And I mention single family because that's obviously the alternative here is to do single family or two family residence, or I can't imagine that anybody would do multifamily on this project, but to us, it's either single or duplexes. The other thing I want to mention from the recommendation is talk about the land use plan recommends that high and moderate density housing should be clustered around commercial activities and arterial class thoroughfares. This is located, and I hope you're aware, it's located on Farm Road, West Farm Road 174, which connects over to Oakwood. And there is a center of activity, both commercial and multifamily and duplexes in that whole area. And this would fit very much with that, and we believe would follow the recommendation in this plan. I have a map. I think this is probably pretty much what Mr. Tyson put in your packet, but let me pass this around so that we're all talking about the same thing. Because I want to speak just for a minute about the neighbors and the neighborhood and how we think we would fit in with what's going on in this area. The property in the green is this 9.1 acres that's currently owned by the Sparkmans. And if you look on the northeast corner at the top, well, not completely, but just south of Farm Road 174, the blue or purple area over to the right, over to the east, this is all in the county. So this property, basically, when you annexed it, it just moved the county boundary over to the east. And one of the Sparkmans lives in the single-family house that's right there in the northeast section of this property. They are, of course, agreeable to this. Immediately to the west of the property, facing on 174, there's another single-family home. We've met with the owners. They came to the zoning and planning meeting and indicated that they were in favor of the project. The other single family in the area is immediately down on the south, just a little stretch down on the south, and that is currently in the county, but we would abut those two single family homes down there. The brown sections you'll see are existing duplexes. So again, this would fit in with and buffer what exists. We think that this would be a great project. It really fits into the city's growth and progress. It's certainly compatible with what's existing there currently. And we encourage you to approve this. And I think you are aware the Zoning and Planning Commission referred this on to you with its recommendation, which was, I think we had one abstention, maybe because they had some connection with the transaction, and the others on the Planning Commission voted in favor of it. So with that, I'd like to have Eric Anderson from our office talk a little bit about drainage and the more specifics about what's planned for the property, and a little bit about what we've done in a similar project in Ozark, Missouri, which was just completed this year.
Sir, your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Eric Anderson, 2659 East North Street, Springfield, Missouri. I'm going to pass out the site plan, the preliminary site plan, so it kind of gives you guys an idea of what we're talking about. At both the zoning and then obviously tonight, the water issue has came up. And since then, we've actually talked with Mike White with White Surveying. He came out and shot, we didn't do a full topo. Obviously, if the zoning doesn't go through, we don't really need the topo. So he came out and did a kind of a quasi topo of some high points and low points to take a look at, where does the water actually drain, because it's a fairly flat site. And then he passed that on to Mr. Bodine, an engineer in town as well, who looked at where it's going and what would it do. His looking at those shots that Mr. White took, the north third actually flows to the north. It flows away from the south that there was the concern. The north third of the property flows to the north and onto the ditch along 174. The back third, well, let me back up. The middle third is kind of a plateau. He said it's very flat and doesn't really drain. It drains to the east very slightly, and then the back third flows to the south, which is probably what your guys' their problem is. I asked him about draining. The detention would be on the south side of that road that you guys are looking at. Most of you, I think, have it turned this way. If you turn it to the north, the road to the south is where there's no homes and there's a seal. That's where the detention would go. Obviously, we would follow all city regulations for release and flow rates and everything that's required. I asked him about which way would we be able to release the water. He actually said, with having no duplexes on there, you have an option of going either way, whichever works better. So he said you have some flexibility on what you're able to do. Now, I know at the last meeting there was some concerns about flowing it to the, the southwest, and then there's some concerns about flowing to the southeast. So obviously, whatever we do, we take that into consideration as to what we would be doing, obviously with our engineer and all that. So I just kind of wanted to show you how the site may lay, how the road, how the road all works and everything like that. We mirrored this after a development we did in Ozark just recently. It was 42 units, 21 duplexes, very similar. Joe has some pictures of what we've done in the past. You can take a few of these and take a look at what we've done in the past. There's 3 pictures in each. These are just taken with my iPhone during construction, so they're not very good quality, but I wanted to have something to show you that what we've done to take a look at our product.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. Mr. Wilson.
Planning and zoning had questions concerning Timber Oak Court Street as to whether they'd have to build up for it to go onto their property. I was out there and it's pretty much level. Now, Rankin Acres, their concern, they were saying these last streets on the south side of Timber Oak, they built the land up, and as a result, water's running in on their houses. One family said they've had to spend over $5,000 replacing the back side of their house. That was their concern with this property, is the runoff, where it's going to go. Now, this is from planning and zoning, the members there. That's for everybody's information.
All right, thank you, sir. Public hearing is now closed. We'll move on to the bill. Get a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-03.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0, Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving amending the zoning code and official map by changing the classification of approximately 9.1 acres located at West Farm Road 174, parcel ID 8817-164-01059, owned by James R. Sparkman et al., from agricultural AG to two-family residential R2.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Yes. I just had a few comments here. The public infrastructure that's located in proximity to this particular site is sufficient to support single or two-family residential densities. Although I am familiar with some of the information that Mr. Carmichael provided, I don't believe that actually appears in the report that you have here. That it is true that two-family zoning does not necessarily generate more trips than a single-family zone does. So it's not necessarily the case, but I don't know that that appears in the report. I don't know that that's necessarily would pan out for this particular site, but that is true that there's some evidence that suggests that the number of trips generated is roughly equivalent, rather than a lot of people would assume that there would be more traffic since there's more dwelling units, but there's some evidence that indicates that potentially fewer vehicles owned and potentially fewer trips made per day. So I am familiar with that, but like I said, I don't believe that that appears here as part of the recommendation. So, and then again, in speaking on that recommendation, I have to apologize. You'll tell from what I'm about to say that I really weighed how and how to phrase the recommendation on this particular one, because it was very difficult. So much so I had multiple drafts of my exhibit. The draft that you have here in front of you was actually an earlier draft. It is not the draft that I presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there are just a few differences, but one of those differences is the language for staff recommendation. This is an earlier draft that indicates that staff has a very clear recommendation for approval. What I presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission in the draft that you should have in front of you is actually more of a neutral statement. So everything that Mr. Carmichael said is true about what the land use plan says with regard to this property. Generally speaking, the land use plan does say that higher densities, particularly those moderate densities, which would include two-family zoning, is most appropriately located in places like this. Places where it is compatible with what the existing development pattern is, which of course it is. There's duplexes immediately adjoining and across the street. That it's close to arterial thoroughfares, which in this case it is, which would be Oakwood Avenue, which is about to be improved, and close to commercial activity centers, which you have there in Republic Commons. So places like this would fit the bill. However, the land use map that is adopted as a part of that plan does not indicate that this particular parcel is appropriate for moderate density residential development. It indicates instead that low density development is appropriate, which would include all three of our conventional single family residential zoning districts, those being R1L, R1M, and R1H. So like I said, the plan is more than a map, but the map does indicate a very specific use for this site. The plan in general would say that places like this would be appropriate. However, the map indicates otherwise. So that's why I say the recommendation comes out slightly neutral in that regard, simply because the site is of a small scale. I don't believe it does present any major traffic concerns from that perspective, particularly once Oakwood is improved. But I think there are arguments both ways, and certainly either direction could be possible. So that being said, Planning and Zoning Commission also, in this case, voted to recommend approval.
Questions, comments, discussion?
So just to clarify, by having 40 driveways as opposed to 20, it does not increase traffic count?
I don't know that. I do not know that. So there are some studies that suggest that that is not necessarily true. Whether that is true in this particular case, I do not know.
And then you pretty much answered that low density. So when it was brought to say, hey, we need to annex it, it was even brought up, hey, what is this? What's the land use show? It's always going to be low density. Now we're saying, now we want to do two-family. And I agree that, I look here and it's close to the other duplexes, but then the next wave of land, can we do duplexes there, and then the next duplex? Like at some point we were going to have to phase out of duplexes into some other land use.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, this particular proposal may not pose a major concern, but like you say, you could be facing a situation of, for lack of a better term, death by 1,000 cuts. Where do you draw the line? And so the map draws the line in a particular place. So Does that answer your question?
Any other questions? Mr. Mendez?
So just to clarify, is staff recommending approval or are they neutral to this?
Just to be perfect, I know this probably sounds like a cop-out, but I read that plan multiple times. Like I said, the map is what it is. It's very clear. But there is no doubt that when you look at the plan, it does recommend that locations like this would be appropriate. What weight council wants to give to the map versus just some of those general ideas about the right locations for higher densities, I'll defer to the council.
Okay. Second question, I remember a while back we had almost a surplus of empty homes. We had a lot of available homes. Do you know what that count is like now? I mean, do we have a lot of, I want to say multifamily or two-family sites available?
I do not have that information.
Okay.
In terms of vacancies, I do not know.
Okay.
In terms of number of available single-family lots, that's easier for me to provide that information, but I don't have data on vacancies.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron.
So Garrett, in the housing analysis that we're going to do with the comp plan review, that would be information that would be disclosed in that study, would it? Would it not?
Yeah.
That's information we need to know to answer that question.
Okay.
I would hope that it would. Sometimes vacancy rates, sometimes that data can be hard to obtain. Otherwise, I probably would have it. But specifically when you're talking about apartment complexes, they tend to not want to divulge that information for whatever reason. Okay. But I would hope that we could get some meaningful data on that.
Okay. And then my last question, any idea from your experience what this does to the school district or from past experiences? I'd just be interested in hearing, you know, I know this could bring 2 families per each unit, which could each have 2 kids. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, so that's really difficult to determine, and would be, I said there's some evidence out there, I think Mr. Carmichael mentioned this just briefly, that just like with the traffic, because you have more dwellings does not necessarily mean that you have more kids. But you could have more kids. Okay. It's just not necessarily the case. But you could also look at it from a revenue generation standpoint as well. What sort of property taxes would be likely generated compared to alternative uses, and I could certainly study that as well. I don't have that information here to answer that, but we could look into that relatively easily.
Okay, I'm more interested in the revenue piece.
Sure, I can look into that and let you know.
Compared to the low density residential, I mean, what's comparison to amount of housing in one area versus the duplexes, multifamily duplexes versus the low density residential, which is what we originally, when we annexed it, was the original conversation.
So I had done all those calculations. I didn't bring them with me, but it does exceed. No matter how you look at it, whether you look at a specific proposal that was handed out tonight, or whether you just take some general averages, it does exceed what the land use plan says in terms of the range of units per acre that you would want to have for low density residential. You would have to space out the duplexes very far apart to get into that range, which I think is 4 to 6 dwelling units per acre. Our typical R1M zoning district would fit right in the middle of that. The 2-family zoning district, you're looking at probably closer to 7, 8, 9, or 10 dwelling units per acre.
Mr. Ian, did you have something?
Well, I was just trying to figure out if they were single family dwelling. What I'm saying is versus what if it was single family versus duplexes? How many dwellings could be on this 9 acres if it was single family?
High density. Let's say it's high density.
encourage me to make sure I bring my notes next time.
This, can you bring this back to this next meeting? Do the calculations, bring them back to this next meeting?
Yeah, we can. We're just in
Or
the first
email
reading,
them out.
so we absolutely can. I think you'll have an answer for you here pretty quick.
Probably 39. No, I'm sorry. That's not correct.
Mr. Tyson?
Yes.
So in order to make sure that we have the most accurate numbers that we can, if we could ask that we just have those available before our second read?
Yes. Yes, I can do that.
That-
Yeah,
that'll give
I
you
believe
enough-
it would be 30.
Gives you an opportunity to accurately answer the question without trying to do it on your phone. I know that's probably not the most comfortable position to be in. So we have, the plan that they have now shows 40, is that right? Or, I'm sorry, 20? 40.
20 buildings, correct? Yeah, so that would be 40
40
units.
residents. Any
And
other
whether
questions?
you could, that was just a very simple calc, whether you could actually get that many lots in there would be questionable. So I think it's probably significantly less than 39 at the end of the day.
Any other questions from council? Discussion? I think you already, question I had that our current adopted land use plan includes proposal future land use map that indicates this particular site most appropriately used for low-density, single-family housing, and I'm assuming that is what was brought to council on the rezone to begin with. So I think probably just a lot of questions from council before we get to the second read, that if we can try to address those and make the best educated decision that we can.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. This is first read. If you have any questions in the meantime, please get with Mr. Tyson. Otherwise, we will be ready at the next meeting with those answers. On to a public hearing of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri regarding approving the annexation of approximately 48.5 acres located at 7012 West Farm Road 170 and adjacent right-of-way. Parcel ID 881715100014. Ms. Haynes, you give us an overview.
Yes, good evening. The voluntary annexation application you have before you tonight, property is owned by Sam McCroskey. The application itself is in coordination with Sean Turner of Turner Building and Development. It is for a total of 48.5 acres, the parcel itself and the associated adjacent right-of-way.
Thank you. Moving into the public hearing, anyone who would like to speak against this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Anyone who would like to speak against it? Seeing none, anyone who would like to speak for this agenda item, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes. Seeing none, this public hearing is closed. On to the bill. Need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-04.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0, Ms. Brenda.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, approving the annexation of approximately 48.5 acres located at 7012 West Farm Road 170 and adjacent right-of-way, parcel ID 881715100014.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes.
Yes. In the review of this application, staff was able to determine that city water and sanitary services are available to this property. They are in close proximity. The actual review of the types of services that are available and the capacity of those services, the water, sanitary, sewer, and stormwater, will be considered at the actual time of development. At this time, we're not aware of any definitive plans regarding the subsequent rezoning of this property and development of this property. The land use designation of the subject parcel is low-density residential. Again, the low-density residential includes single-family residential development at 1 to 6 units per acre, and the associated neighborhood compatible uses. I think we really just discussed it. The low density includes the high density single family, the R1H, the R1M, which is the medium density, and then the low density, the R1L. If the annexation by council, the land itself, when annexed into the city, will come in as an agricultural piece of property. So if the owner decides to actually go into the development of this property, you will probably likely be seeing a rezoning application as the secondary part of the development of this property. The rezoning, if approved at that point, we would then look at the actual development of the site, which is reviewed administratively by staff.
Any questions, comments, discussion, Ms. Haynes?
Can you say that again? We would look at a rezoning?
Yes, so since this property is an agricultural use in the county, it will come into the city as agricultural zoning. So any subsequent development of this property, the secondary portion of the actual development will be a rezoning application, and then we'll have the actual review of the construction documents and design for the development.
What is the rates? I see here it says low density 1 to 6 units per acre. What's high density? What's that figure?
The high density for the future land use, I believe what Garrett had indicated is like 7, 8, and 9 units per acre. In excess of that. Okay, so quite a bit higher.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions from council? Does our future land use map even include this plot of land?
Yes.
And what did it suggest? Was it?
It is for the low density residential.
Okay.
So it is that 1 to 6 units per acre.
Right.
Is that what that one next to it is? Considered low density?
The one
Opportunity and Vintage.
Yeah.
Directly west, that is, it's zoned R1M, and this entire area is designated as low density residential.
Any other questions? Okay. This is First Street. If you have any questions, please give Ms. Haynes in the meantime. We're out of public hearings. Need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-05.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Ms. Brenda?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, amending section 705.120 by amending the sewer averaging period.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie.
Good evening. What we're wanting to do, what Public Works is wanting to do, utility billing, we discussed this. The way our billing has been working in the past, we've been taking our sewer averages all the way through into the month of October. For the summertime usage, when people are actually watering lawns, washing cars, swimming pools, we want to shorten that period up. So we're not actually using, shorten that period up to where we're using more, excuse me. I'm working on a cold also. We want to shorten that period up so that when, for the actual, the billing average, a shorter period, and so we're not at, more water is actually, the water that's actually going down the ground is, we're not charging for being treated in the sewer. That's kind of the simplest way to put it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lesby? Comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron?
Craig, I thank you for putting this together because I do think that this is the right thing to do for the community because there are people that are still watering in November. And so I don't think the objective is not to be we're not trying to collect for water that's not going there. And I think this was changed in 2012. And I do think this is the right step to take to kind of right that. So thanks for bringing this forward.
You're welcome.
And I would agree too. I think that it gave a pretty bad appearance, previously, that it looked like we were trying to capture a higher rate when people were watering, so it's not going back into our system. But by going back to November, I know this year for sure we didn't even watering much, but we've gotten several emails about this, and it goes back to the water or the sewer and water rates overall in the City of Republic. And it just shows that we're trying to make some steps to make it better.
Well, that's great, and it is a thing to do. It's not fair to be charging the citizens for something for pay for treatment that we're not receiving.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Well, thank you, sir. This was a first read, so if you have any questions, please get with Mr. Lesby or Mr. Cameron in the meantime. Thank you, sir. Okay. On to bill number, do I have a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-06?
Motion. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0, Ms. Brennan.
Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri to amend Title V of the Republic Municipal Code by repealing and replacing Section 500.050, building permit fees and certain fees associated therewith.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
This bill proposes to completely repeal our section that talks about building permits, how long applications are valid for, how long the permit itself is valid for, plus it sets out all of the fees for our various building permits. We're proposing to completely repeal that and replace it, and in doing so, we will be clarifying several of those policies relating to validity, just to address problems that we've encountered over the years since we adopted that language, so just to fix some things and to clarify some things there. With regard to the fee schedule themselves, we are proposing a new fee schedule. Several of what I refer to as minor permits, like fences, MEP permits, accessory buildings, some of those are being reduced. Any permit that does not actually require an inspection by our inspector, we're reducing that cost from 15 down to 20 in recognition that we're not actually going to send anybody out there. So we'll be charging less for some of those. Anything that does require, on the residential side, currently for residential remodels, if you're doing something, it doesn't matter whether it requires a single inspection or multiple inspections. We're calculating it based on the area. You could be doing something very simple, and we could potentially charge way too much for that. So if it's a single inspection type of work, we'll be reducing that fee from the formula calculation down to just $50, which is what we need to recoup our costs to conduct that particular inspection. On the commercial side of things, that's where you will see probably the most significant change. Our formula is currently set up such that it's based on gross area, floor area of the building. And so as the building gets larger, the fee goes up. However, when you consider some of the buildings that are being built in Republic right now, some of these very large warehouse buildings, you consider their size, you end up having fees that are just way too high. So the fees can be sometimes $40,000 to $50,000 whenever it's not costing the city $40,000 to $50,000 to conduct that plan review and to perform those inspections. It's just too much. And so in recognition of that, I have proposed a different formula that modifies the fee in recognition of the economies of scale that the city realizes. It doesn't take the inspector twice as long to inspect a 100,000 square foot building as it does a 50,000 square foot building. We realize these economies, and so in recognition of that, we're proposing that as the building gets to a certain point and continues to get larger in area, the fee does not get, it gets larger, but only incrementally so. That makes sense. So that keeps the fees down to what I believe is a reasonable amount. The other major change that you see in the fee structure there is if you're doing a remodel or an infill, whether residential or commercial, previously we would charge the same amount for that permit fee as we would if you were building a new building from the ground up. Now, in recognition that that is likely to only require a fewer number of inspections, there will now be a reduced rate for those remodels. You only pay 75% of what the fee would be if it were being built from the ground up. So trying to be more reasonable and more equitable in the way that we calculate some of these fees. One other notable thing is we are eliminating the re-roof permit fee. the city was never authorized to issue roof permits anyways, so I thought that was a reasonable change as well. On that same note, another thing that I want to point out, and this affects probably the residential things, new residential building more than anything, is I've also proposed to raise our permit fee multiplier from .0031 to .0035. And the reason for that is that all of this new structure is designed to do something that is to fund the building services program in the community development department, and to have that multiplier evaluated annually to ensure that we continue to fund that at an adequate level through user charges. Because the alternative to that is, if we are not funding it through user charges, that program is being subsidized by general fund revenues. To the degree that we're not doing our job in making sure that those user charges are appropriately set, and the subsidy continues to grow because we're not doing that, then potentially that's, fewer cops on the street, or fewer police vehicles that we're able to purchase, or other general fund activities potentially suffer because of that. So this is designed, and the reason for that increase is to make sure that the program itself, based on what we have projected to be the volume of building next year, that we will fund the program at a certain level. So this proposes, and that level is whatever the council would suggest. What I've proposed is to get us between what I believe, based on projected volumes, what I believe will be built next year, is to get us up in that range of between 75% and fully funded. I believe we'll hit somewhere in that, because the general taxpayers do get some benefit from this program. Not all of the benefits go to the people pulling the permits. There are general benefits, and so it's not inappropriate that general fund revenues would go to fund some of this, but where that target is, whether it's 50 or 75 or 80, that could be open to discussion. We could just adjust that multiplier accordingly. But what I have proposed, I believe, hits us in that 3/4 to fully funded range for fiscal year 2018, and then we would reevaluate for fiscal year 2019. If we had more building, or we're projecting more building, then that multiplier could come down, or vice versa, in order to make sure that that program is not a drain on the rest of the general fund, if that makes sense. And I hope that it does. So that being said, that increase will result in an increase in new single-family building permit fee costs. So I've done some research, and I can provide more detailed data prior to the second reading. I send it out by email. The impact that has is it will raise a new single-family building permit fee, depending on size, $100-ish, probably a little bit less than from what it is now. Where does that put us? The question always comes up, where does that put us in relation to other neighboring communities? It does put significantly higher when it comes to just a building permit fee. By the time you add in all of the fees that get imposed on builders to build a single-family house, we're still right in there with everybody else. Some were lower, some were just a little bit higher, because everybody has a different kind of fees. It's very difficult to do an apples-to-apples comparison. We charge one fee, and everything's covered by that one fee, which is why ours is a little bit higher. Some municipalities charge a permit fee, and then you have to pay a separate inspection fee, then you have to pay a separate mechanical and an electrical and a plumbing, then you have to pay for your occupancy permit at the end. So they break it apart into a bunch of different fees. Then there's impact fees. When you add them all together, we're still right in line with other communities, and I can provide that data. But that building permit fee by itself, we would show, if you were to look at it on the graph, is significantly higher.
Okay, any questions, comments, discussion?
Can you repeat that? I'm kidding.
Can you start over, he said? No.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Cameron.
So Garrett, I appreciate again the work and all the processes that we changed to make it better. And I can tell you where we were sitting, we were working on a development. The developer asked us what the building permit fee, and he said it was $30,000. And when we're sitting there trying to market to move these properties, and to know that that's a limiting factor. So I appreciate going and looking at these and creating numbers and be able to explain why we're charging that rate and how it's compatible. And I do think you did a great job of explaining the residential side and how it's all in one fee. So I appreciate the work again to present this, because this is the stuff we need to do to move it and generate and show that we're not trying to create more policy, we're trying to reduce in a lot of areas, and I appreciate the work that's being done. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Anything else? Okay, if nothing else, that is first read, so we'll get Mr. Tyson in the meantime if you have any questions, please. We're in the home stretch. Need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 1-08.
Motion.
Second.
Stand by, we're gonna back out of that because I accidentally walked right past one. I need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-07.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? And that motion carries 7-0. Brenda?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri, authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Republic, Missouri and the City of Springfield, Missouri for the acquisition of pictometry, providing a more accurate geographical information system.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson.
Every 2 to 3 years or so, the city has historically entered into a cooperative governmental agreement with the City of Springfield, Greene County, and other neighboring municipalities to purchase a product that is referred to as pictometry. Pictometry is, the technical term for it is orthophotography, but just think aerial photography, and they provide us with 5 different angles. It comes with bird's eye view and then an oblique view or close to 45 angle view at all 4 cardinal directions. It's also produced in a way that is compatible with the city's geographic information system so that we can bring this imagery up very handily. Our workstations that are licensed to use that software. It's very helpful in conducting analysis. In the Community Development Department, we use it daily. It's also set up in such a way that we can conduct measurements directly to the aerial photography, measure heights of buildings, measure distances. We can view it with utilities laid over it, all sorts of things. So it's critical for us in terms of communicating with the citizens and the people who call with questions. We need to be able to visualize what they're talking about with regard to their property or some site that they're interested in, and this is what gets us there. Our estimated cost for this cooperative purchase is just a little bit over $6,600. For our participation, however, we will get the entire product. So we won't just get the photos for Republic, we'll get all the photos that are flown in this particular flight.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Tyson? I have a couple questions, just real quick. Since this is only done every 2 to 3 years, was this an anticipated item in the budget?
It was.
It was anticipated? Yes. And the other question, so this is, the quote is from them?
Yes.
Okay. I just wondered how, we had 46 tiles at a lower price than Nix's 35 tiles. I just didn't understand how we...
At a lower price?
Yeah.
That we have more partners, so more people are interested in our tiles than theirs.
Okay.
So we get to share the cost with more people.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
More people interested in our tiles. Any other questions? Comments or discussion? Seeing none, this is the first read. Please get Mr. Tyson in the meantime if you have any questions. Thank you, sir. We've already taken care of the resolution, so on to report from staff.
Got one more.
Have I lost that again? Man. This is what happens when you show up to a meeting sick. I should have stayed home and let Mr. Brashears have it.
You're done fine.
Need a motion and a second for the first reading of bill number 18-08.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7-0. Mr. Keelan? I'm sorry, Ms. Brenda. See, I'm trying to do it to you. I'm going to have you read it.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Republic, Missouri to amend Title II of the Republic Municipal Code by repealing and replacing Section 240.010 fees.
Mr. Keelan.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I kind of feel like the Grinch, I'll be real honest with you. I wish I'd have went before Garrett. He's sitting there talking about lowering fees, and I'm coming up here talking about raising fees. But no, always happy to know where we're at fees-wise. Our department compared regionally, we are very fair. What we did recently is conduct a thorough overview of all of our fees across all of our park system. As you can imagine, we have a ton of different fees, whether that be a fee for any program we offer, or any special event, any rental we have across our system, and any admission fee. So there's a lot across our entire park system. I'm happy to bring to you tonight, as a result of that process and as a result of a regional fees study against comparing our fees against those in our region, we only have made changes in 6 areas, and I do want to highlight these just because I failed to include it in your packet. I indicated on the exhibit that I would, but I didn't include it in your packet. So the changes for 18 compared to over 17 are as follows. In athletic programming, our adult softball leagues, those will increase by $25 for all leagues. We offer a fall spring league. In our community programming division and our summer recreation day camp, we're proposing to increase the fee by $5 per week. That's for all campers. Our Schools Out program, we're proposing to increase the fee by $2 per day for all participants. At the Republic Aquatic Center, we're proposing to increase the admission fee for morning splash time and lap swim by 50 cents from $1.50 to $2. The biggest change probably that impacts most people, and we've already heard a little bit about it, but people are very understanding of it, is the gate fee we charge for youth athletic programs. That's going to raise from $1 to $1.50. As you travel around all over this area and you're used to paying a gate fee, those traditionally are up for $2 or $3 even. So I still think we're very reasonable in that. And the final 2 are fees for our pavilions throughout town, throughout our park system. We're increasing the fee by $5. That's for a 2-hour rental from 15 to 20. And finally, for the senior center, the first 4 hours, which is a 4-hour base rental over there, has increased from $50 to $75. So that highlights the fee changes from 17 to 18. Like I said, we are committed to our low fees. We still have a number of our fees that are completely free to the community. So I do believe we're fair and just in the fees that we charge.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, comments, or discussion from council? Seeing none, this first read. If you have any questions, please get with Mr. Keeling in the meantime for the next meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Under reports from staff, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Scott, welcome to your first council meeting. We're glad to have you on board. So Happy New Year, everyone. It's been I thank you for the time that we all got away to take a break. It was very relaxing, but I'm ready to get after it. I know the staff's ready to get after it, and so I know the legislature is ready to get after it. So I want to remind you that on January 24th, they're having a salute to legislators in Jeff City. We're taking a very large contingency of folks to that event. I think there's a lot going on, and I think that we have a lot to be proud of in Republic and the things that are going on. And so I think it's important that we take a good group to say what is affecting our ability to do business and how the legislature can help us. So I know that there's 3 members of the chamber that's going to be going. So Garrett and I attended that last year. If you would like to go, I can still RSVP you. But we have, I think, about 8 or 9 that are going on this trip this year versus just Garrett and I. And I know that there's some things that are on the agenda. So we'll have a legislative agenda that we'll be talking about when we're there. And I'll ask everyone to be a participant to try to continue to work and lobby on behalf of what's good for our community and moving our region forward, and things that could be interfering or kind of difficult for us to navigate around. There's always going to be that new legislative change to how to fund MoDOT and how to get some of that burden off of MoDOT, and that would be a burden back to our ratepayers. And so those are things that we need to work with and talk to our local legislators about. But reflecting back on 2017, I want to tell you that we had some tremendous success. We had 5% sales tax year over year, where a lot of people were not seeing any growth at all. They were seeing deficits. We were actually 5% year over year. We were 30% on franchise fees. And I think that I attribute that a lot to just the ease by which we're still trying to work on our processes to make it easier to do development. We still got a ways to go. We've got things we're working on. But I do think that that's attributable to the staff and the work that goes on. And I'm very thankful for the team that we have and the changes that we've made. But I'm looking forward to 2018 because we got a lot of new things that we need to change. And so, you know, you see, Debbie, I asked, and I thank you for changing that agenda item tonight to the first thing. She's been here all weekend, still working on updating Summit to do the transition into 2018, and it just took 7 hours on the last day of the year. And I just see how much I'm looking forward to when we go transition to the new software. So thank you for approving that. You know, Jim, Jason, I thank you for your time invested in working on getting that done. That'll be a huge transition for this city and for our staff, and our residents will see the benefits of that. They'll see quicker time responses. I also thank Debbie. She is our interior designer as well. So all the changes you've seen in the building, all the mission and the vision, there's still some more work to be done, but all the paint changes to make it a little brighter, looks a little bit wider. I think they take a lot of interest and pride in making this a very welcoming, accepting, and just a place to do business. So she's not here, but I thank her and all the people that have done the work and all the staff that have helped move desks and things around to get it ready. I'm looking forward to the next meeting because we are actually, I do believe we're bringing the code change for the PDD that will make even larger scale developments, housing developments on the larger scale, a lot more palatable and easier to get done, and add some more assurance to the development community. Just to add to the discussion tonight about land use maps, I think that until we get the comprehensive plan and the new land comprehensive plan is done, I think every development we should do should be at least looked at and scrutinized to that level to see where it matches and where it fits into the development of the community. But that's something that you just cannot do overnight, and so hopefully we'll at the next meeting have the comp plan recommendations with those fees and doing the master water plan, the master sewer plan, street, housing. So it's going to be several $100,000 that we're going to be investing into that plan that will guide us and give us a better idea of making decisions as we move forward rather than an older land use plan. So all those things will be updated, but as we're going through that process, it's going to take a while to get it done. So I'm looking forward to the comp plan this year, the new software, and just the new developments that are coming in. We talked about the Purple Burrito. I don't know anything about it, but I've had a lot of positive feedback. Classic Rock Cafe, is that right? Coffee. But to all the businesses that have done business in Republic this year, we're thankful for that. That's why we're seeing a 5% increase. But I think the best is yet to come. I know the best is yet to come because we're just seeing a lot of interest in our community. We've got to manage that growth well. We've got a lot of work to continue to do on public safety. I'm ready to get after it. I'm ready for us to tackle the issues that are still ahead of us, and we still got to improve our process, relationships, and trust. So thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do this year. It's already moving fast, but thank you for the opportunity to serve. So we're going to get after it.
Thank you.
That was 7 minutes.
I'm going to keep mine quick too. So my report is just, I'm happy to see the reduction in regulation continue on into this year. I think we've seen how that works throughout the country and how it spurs economic growth. We can't just do away with everything and say, you know, it's a clean slate, do whatever you want. But I think by reducing the regulation, we're seeing the fruits of that by businesses that want to relocate to Republic. And I know it's kind of a balancing act to make sure that we're getting the money that we need to support the departments, but at the same time, we're getting enough, but we're not overcharging, because I know that balancing act says, well, if you don't get enough, now a taxpayer who has absolutely nothing to do with this could be left on the hook through the general fund, whether they know it or not, they end up paying it, and it comes out of another service, like you said. So I applaud you guys for making sure that we're getting to the right percentage on that. However, I don't want to be the one to come up with that formula, so I'm glad you guys are there. The other thing I would just talk quickly about is land use, and I know we had a lot of public hearings tonight, and it's because it's the first meeting of the year and a lot of things got pushed back until we got into the new year. But those land use maps, at one point in time there was a reason for them, and I just want to make sure we're cautious in the managed growth of our city, because I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of other places. And we've seen what happens when we try to force it one way. It doesn't work. The market goes where it wants to go, and we're trying to plan ahead of where the market's telling us it's going to be, and not forcing it into a corner. So the land use says, you know, when somebody comes in and they want to annex in, a lot of times it's, I want to annex in at the ease where I know council will approve it, and then I'll go for a re-annexation later. So I just think we should all be cautious about how or not a re-annexation, but changing the zoning, the rezone. So I saw Karen's face and I was like, wait, I think I said that wrong. So just to be cautious in our managed growth. I think we're on the right track and everything's going great. So I am going to turn it over to council reports, and I'll start with Mr. Dykeman tonight.
Well, just glad everybody's back and hope you had a good holiday. Talked with Debbie this evening when I got here, and of course she's definitely looking forward to getting started. But again, can't say enough about the staff that we've got with the city and their devotion to time that they put in to see that things get done. And I just think it's, you know, a great place to live, a great place to have a business, and definitely enjoy being on the council to help move things forward.
So you don't think anybody's gonna shed a tear to see Summit go?
Well, no, not a tear.
Thank you. Mr. Mendez?
Couple thank yous to the chief for getting the railroad crossing bell issue taken care of. That seemed to be quite a job, quite a mountain to overcome. That was great. It was neat to see the interaction on Facebook and some of the comments and the dialogue there. Also, completion of the security training workshop that they did with area churches. That's awesome. And then I wish Debbie was here to thank her for her hard work. You know, putting in long hours is tough, but we're fortunate to have her, as we are with all of the department heads. They're doing a great job. So great to see the businesses coming in too. So.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Ann.
Well, Happy New Year, and I am just super excited to see what 2018 has to bring. I mean, we're starting out with a bang, obviously, with all these hearings. So I chat with Debbie and Megan pretty often. I'm very thankful for all the hard work that they do, along with all of our staff. So I'm just really excited, and I believe the best is yet to come too.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I'll follow what these three have said. Garrett, thanks for all the work on trying to streamline the processes to make it easier for people to come to the city. So.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Self?
I just want to welcome Scott, and the mayor kept you on your toes tonight, so you passed first time, so that's good. That's really all I've got is just welcome him. So the place looks great too.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Well, as the rest, I would like to thank the staff for all they've done. It's really been a big turnaround, and everything's going good, and I'm looking forward to see what happens this year. And welcome Scott in. He's in for a good long haul.
We're not letting him go anywhere.
But everything's been good so far. I'm glad that things are working out the way they're working out. It's better, I hate to say it, but it's better now than it's been in the past.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jones is not here tonight, and I don't want to discuss his condition in fear of being sued with a HIPAA violation. But no, seriously, Mr. Jones is sick. He's trying to recover at home, and he gets better soon. So, Mr. Bashir.
Like we've all mentioned staff tonight, we see what we do every time, and I think it's very appropriate. For the councilman and the people that weren't at the appreciation dinner the other night, the Christmas dinner, that was neat. It was really, I know several of you were there, but thanks so much for the people that put that together. That's not easy. And the people that put it together are also the ones that bring in the chairs, bring the Christmas trees, and when it's all over, you load the trailer and head back to the community center. So it's a lot of work. But to see the people there, the employees, to be honored for jobs that they've done beyond what really is expected of them is neat. Then to see, like I said, the appreciation that we have to them be expressed is great. It's always good to see streets repaired and our city improved. But it's really neat to see Scott, thank you, finally finished. Those people have lived on that street for a long time with major problems with it. Could be drainage, sinkholes, not sinkholes, soft spots, and it really looks neat right now. 2017 has been really great. I mean, it really has been. But like so many have said tonight, I think the best is still yet to come. We're starting off so much better this year, even than we started last year. And I'm really optimistic as what the city's going to be like just another year from now. So thanks again, staff. You all do a super job. That's about it.
All right. With nothing else, I'd ask for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries 7-0. We're adjourned.
Good job here.